Okay, everyone, now we're going to be talking about how conflict escalates, how it gets worse and worse and worse. And let's talk about some of the factors that change during conflict escalation that kind of explain what might be going on. Okay? So basically, this describes some of the changes that go on, uncertainty leading to commitment, perception leading to misperception, and so on. So let's go over each of these. First, uncertainty leading to commitment. Basically, when you have group members who disagree about something, at some point there's going to be some doubts necessarily. Nobody starts out, well, not I shouldn't say nobody, but often when you're taking a position on a particular issue, you're not 100% sure you're right. You may be 75% sure you're right, but you're not 100% sure you're right. You're stating your opinion. You're taking a position, but maybe you're not really. But you're still you're making your case, but you're not really 100% set in it. Okay, but when you have somebody who disagrees with you, and maybe somebody disagrees with you, and maybe does it in an inartful way, perhaps by either intentionally or unintentionally insulting you for taking this position. Well, your reaction might be for you to cement yourself into that position, dig in deep and say, no, I'm right and you're wrong, and I'm certain about my position here. And basically, it's when you have this certainty. Now you're making this commitment to this position, and nobody's going to move you at all. And that is essentially no place for negotiation. When you're stuck in your position now, now you've got a fight on your hands. Another interesting aspect of psychological reaction that's going on is called reactance. When you feel as if your freedom of choice is being threatened. There's something you want to do, and something is preventing you from doing something you want to do. You have what is called psychological reactance. You have this kind of like a rebellion against anybody who is putting any kind of threat to your freedom. And maybe this reactance kind of goes even a little bit overboard. And so now, when somebody is just, saying something that that essentially prevents you from doing what you want to do, you kind of go overboard and fight back in perhaps an overbearing way to assert your freedom, essentially. So this uncertainty that you have, which is natural, you're not, you don't start out 100% sure of what your position is, but when you get resistance, it leads to kind of like digging in and committing. Perception leading to misperception. Everybody has their own perception of a situation. But when you get into a conflict situation, now you have an opportunity to misperceive the situation. Now you are seeing things that really aren't there. You might be misattributing the motives of your opponent, let's say. You may be thinking it's not just that they disagree with you. They're disagreeing with you because they think you're an idiot, and they just want to make life difficult for you. And so you're having this motivation that the person who disagrees with you is hostile and is personally attacking you, when really they're just, attacking your position perhaps and taking a different one. It's not against you personally, but they misattribute it to, their, in that case. And again, they may also think that, the motivation is about, they want to assert power over you. That's why they want to do it. And you see a whole lot of this in real life political conflict, as far as different members of the political aisle accusing the other side of having these nefarious motives for their positions. The FAE, the fundamental attribution error, is relevant here as well. And if you to refresh your memory on the fundamental attribution error is to attribute people's behavior to personal characteristics and being more or less dismissive of situational factors that influence their behavior. When in reality, we are very much influenced by the situation. And when you see someone do something, you automatically take it as due to being a personal characteristic. That's a fundamental attribution error, and it's called fundamental because it is something that we all do. Every one of us does this. As an example, let's say you're driving on the highway, and somebody cuts in front of you, making you having to slam on the brakes. So what's the first thing you say? Maniac, idiot, whatever it is. And really, there might be other factors that might be, might have led him to do. There might have been some object in the road that he was trying to immediately get out of the way of, and he cut you off. It wasn't that he was trying to make you mad, and he was just doing it to avoid something in the road. So we make the fundamental attribution error automatically say that it's a disposition. It's his personal disposition that led him to do this thing. Well, what does this have to do with conflict? What it has to do with conflict is your opponent might be stating a position based on various factors that would lead him to take this position, and it's not anything personal. It's not that he personally doesn't like you, that he's taking the opposite position. It's that he is doing it because maybe maybe it is different situational factors that lead him to take this position. Maybe he's he is in a circumstance where he's representing certain constituencies, and he can't, just go his own way. He has to kind of go with what they're doing. In that case, it's nothing personal. So, when you misperceive, when you assume that people are doing something because they're intentionally trying to hurt you, well, then that is just going to inflame things. It's just going to make the conflict worse. Soft tactics can translate into hard tactics. Soft tactics, when it comes to trying to influence someone, include persuasion. It can include ingratiation, trying to be nice to someone to try to get them to agree with you. Offering rewards, that kind of thing. These are soft tactics. But as conflict gets worse, those soft tactics, those nice guy tactics, definitely become worse. So you have people who will start getting nasty and start doing things that are, that can kind of get a little bit rough. So, for example, requests. In this example, this research was done by Dean Pruitt and his colleagues over at the University of Buffalo, and they basically set up a lab situation in which two groups were working on a project. I think they were making greeting cards or something, and they had to share a certain amount of supplies, and it was set up so that one of the groups, in this case, the group really was Confederates. They weren't really, but they were essentially hoarding certain supplies, so that the other group couldn't get the work done. And basically, the purpose of the study was not to make greeting cards, but the purpose of the study was to see what kind of tactics the group that was essentially being shut out from the supplies they needed what kind of tactics they would try to get the supplies they needed, and how much it would escalate in terms of the tactics they would use. So it started out with a nice request, may I use the glue please, and then and again, I have to go everybody did it. Somebody saying, maybe then it becomes a little bit more statement, we need the glue. Then it starts getting harder. Demand, give me the glue now. Then complaints, what's wrong with you? Why don't you share? So the tactics get a little bit tougher and tougher and tougher. Give me the glue or else, that kind of thing. As an interesting side note here, you should know that I was an undergraduate student at the time, and I actually worked in Dr. Pruitt's lab. So I was actually involved in this particular study that you are reading about. The other, Pruitt's colleagues were graduate students when I was an undergraduate. So I was working in that lab myself. So just an interesting little note. Reciprocity is a norm that we've talked about several times here. Basically, we have a norm for reciprocity. If you do something for me, I do something for you. You do something good for me, I do something good to you. If you do something bad to me, I'm going to do something bad to you. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Okay? That reflects the norm of reciprocity. Well, in terms of a conflict situation, one person does something, inflicts some harm to another person. Well, the person who is harmed is going to retaliate as far as the norm of reciprocity. So they're going to return harm with harm. Okay? So there's a back and forth of I harm you, you harm me. Well, guess what happens? And this is where escalation occurs. What happens if I punch you once, and in retaliation you punch me 3 times? Well, that's an escalation. And now I might hit you with a belt, and then you might hit me with a stick, and then it might get more and more violent after that. Do you see what I'm saying? Basically, conflict escalation occurs with the overmatching. In other words, where the retaliation that the person receives, the retaliation that a person receives after harming somebody, when the retaliation is worse than the original harm, then it just escalates higher and higher and higher from that. And that is this is a very common circumstance. And you can see how small conflicts can lead to large conflicts based on this principle here. Emotions change as well. So when there's a disagreement, there's often irritation. It's a little frustrating that you want to get something done, and somebody here is interfering with what you want to get done. You have a particular position, and this person is resisting. So you're like, oh, this is annoying. But then the annoyance can lead to anger. The anger leading to hostile behaviors, and it becomes very difficult to deal with someone who is angry, as you probably have known. When you are in a conflict with someone and both of you are very angry, then you're really not in the mood to sit down and be nice to each other. You then want to just hurt the other person, and that seems to be how you are functioning. Flaming is kind of an internet version of this, where a person sending saying unpleasant things online. Conflicts often start out with maybe just 2 people, but then people bring their friends along to support themselves. And when they want to get support, they ask for supporters. So in other words, if you are having a one-on-one argument with somebody, You might try to find people who also support your position and have them back you up. And they're going to do the same thing. Well, now you've gone from a 2-person conflict to perhaps a 10-people conflict. And now you are getting into some difficult things where now it gets into, and now it expands just from localized to more maybe institution-wide conflict, and it becomes bad. So you have these coalitions now. Instead of individuals, you have coalitions, groups that stick together. And those coalitions, they may become cohesive then. And they really are trying to strengthen themselves. And one coalition going against another, and then you've got a little bit of a war going on. So this is really, how conflict can escalate, because it's just a simple conflict between 2 people, then perhaps comes institution-wide. But nevertheless, there is hope. There is conflict resolution that can take place. And so the certainty can then be brought back. You can get to negotiation. The misperception can be resolved into understanding. The hard tactics can be resolved to make them more cooperative, and so on. So let's talk about each of these. Negotiation is very important. You want to be able to take a circumstance where people are committed and cemented into their positions, and you got to get them to sit down and negotiate and essentially start to resolve the circumstance. But with negotiation, there are things that you need to consider, and there are some very sensible steps for negotiation, what is called principled negotiation. It makes a really good deal of sense. And this is talked about in the textbook too. And the idea is, you really have to get down to the issues involved. And forget it, and not worry about the people, as far as, this person's mean, or this person's a jerk, or everything like that. You got to attack the position and work on the positions and try to deal with that. So, there's kind of soft negotiation, which is, which could be used as hard negotiation, the tough guy negotiation. But a principled negotiation is really the best way to go. In soft negotiation, hey, you're just talking with friends here. You disagree about a position, but you're my friend. If you're in a hard negotiator, you're seeing this person as your opponent, your adversary. But in principled negotiation, you appreciate that the person in front of you who disagrees with you is a problem solver, and I'm a problem solver too. So if you see yourself as problem solvers, then you're going to work on effectively dealing with the problem. What is the goal of soft negotiation? You just want to agree. You just want everyone to be nice to each other and agree. Hard negotiation, you want to win. You want a victory. However, with principled negotiation, you want to reach a good outcome. Efficient, amicable, everything. You want to reach the best outcome. So you want the best solution. It's not about victory or loss or anything like that. Concessions. You are going to, if in a soft negotiator is just going to make concessions, be willing to open themselves up for concessions. The hard negotiators are going to demand concessions. If you don't concede this, we're not doing anything. However, principled negotiation, you have to realize the problem is separate from the people. So let's deal with the problem instead of worrying about who gives up what or whatnot. The people versus the problems. You want to be the soft negotiation is going to be soft on both the people and the problem. In other words, they're going to be nice to their opponent, to the person they're negotiating with, nicey, and they're also not going to really try to really solve the problem. They're just going to want to get the other person to agree and just try to, all right, I'll concede this, I'll concede that. So they're kind of soft. They're not really dealing with the problem well. Hard negotiations, they're going to be tough on the problem. They're going to really want to work on the problem the way they see it and no more, and they're going to really make the person that they're negotiating with suffer. Be hard on that person, make that person agree with you. With principled negotiation, you want to be soft on the people. You want to be nice to everybody and be nice to the people, but you want to be tough on the problem. In other words, you have to really attack the problem and make sure that you're honestly dealing with it. Trust is a big issue with conflict. Soft negotiation, the soft negotiators want to trust the person they're negotiating with. So they're very trusting. They're not, they may be leaving themselves open for attack, but because they are so trusting, but they want to just trust the other person. Hard negotiation, they're going to distrust the person that they're negotiating with. They're going to assume that the person they're negotiating with has an underlying motive. They're not going to trust that person. However, with principled negotiation, trust is independent. Trust is irrelevant. You want to focus on the problem. Don't worry about who trusts who. The positions, soft negotiators are very easily changing their position to accommodate the person they're negotiating. The hard negotiator is committed and they're dug into their position. The principled negotiation, they're focused on the interest, not the position. They're focused on, what do essentially, the issue is each negotiator saying, what do I want ultimately, and the other, and just what do you want ultimately? So in other words, understanding what each person wants. And this is actually very important. Oftentimes when we think about negotiation, we think about making a compromise. Okay? So I'm going to cut back some of mine, and you're going to cut back some of yours, and we'll both be sort of not exactly happy, not exactly upset, but just kind of walk away with at least some of what we got. Okay? And compromise is often what does happen as a result of negotiation. However, there are certain kinds of circumstances where you might get what is called a win-win solution, where you don't even have to give up anything, where both parties can get a very valuable outcome. Kind of like with the prisoner's dilemma, where both parties cooperate, everybody does better. But oftentimes there are these what are called integrative solutions, these win-win solutions. They are out there. So you can have two parties who are really fighting over a particular issue. But if you really dig down and figure out what is behind each party's position, and let's see what we can figure out that might satisfy what they actually need, then you'd find the win-win solution. Here is an example. There's a classic story about two sisters who are fighting over an orange. Each person wants the orange. Okay? One sister, they could take a powerful position to say one sister could just take the orange and walk away, or they can do a compromise. They can cut the orange in half, and both parties will say, well, at least they got a half an orange, so it could be worse. But if you really trying to dig in and figure out what exactly is the interest of each party, what does each sister want the orange for? Well, then you get a very different circumstance here. Now, what if you find out that the first sister wants the orange to make juice? And what about the second sister wants the orange to make cake? She only wants the peel. The first sister wants the pulp. The second sister wants the peel. Well, now there you have a solution. The peel goes to one sister. The pulp goes to the other sister. Both parties get exactly what they want. It's a win-win solution. No compromise necessary. And it all has to do with finding out what the underlying interest is for each of the two sisters. So now we can talk about misperception leading to understanding. Okay? You want your, you want to be able to now try to really understand what the other person is doing. So get rid of all the misperception, the misattribution that we've been talking about before. And having a sense of empathy, having a sense of recognizing your opponent's point of view, taking that person's point of view. Now you can see that that person is really not trying to personally attack you. That person has reasonable, justifiable circumstances for taking his or her position. So you can really be that way you can get kind of reduce the escalation there. Hard tactics can be converted into cooperative tactics. You want to be able to cooperate. You still want to find a good solution for yourself, but you want to be also concerned about the other as well. So the best way to do, best solution is the cooperative solution, where you really are concerned about your position. You're not going to give up stuff just to make agreement. So you still want the best for yourself, but you also want what is best for your opponent as well. So if you really are concerned with both your success and your opponent's success, then you're going to be more likely to cooperate, because you're going to be seeing, okay, let's see what we can do to make us both happy. If you're yielding, then you're just going to, it's kind of like that self-negotiating. You're going to just give up whatever it is for yourself, and just do what it is for your opponent. Just give it up for the opponent. And I'll tell you the truth, there might be some times where yielding actually might be the best solution. You feel that maybe the issue isn't that important to you, and maybe it would be better for future negotiations to just give up your concern altogether. You can go ahead and do that. So yielding is not necessarily a bad thing. It can be a very good thing. Avoiding could also be a good thing. If an issue is not that important to you, and you don't want to get into an argument with the other person, you could just, avoid the situation altogether and avoid the fight. And that is another way of dealing with a difficult situation. There may, of course, be times where maybe you really got to fight for your position. If you feel that the other person is not going anywhere and not going to budge, and you really need to, maybe you feel your position is very, very important, you might resort to fighting. But hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully you can maintain a high concern for the person you are in conflict with, to kind of reduce the tension there and get to good win-win solutions. Okay? Now, retaliation can lead to forgiveness, so you can... the tit-for-tat strategy is effective. Now, you can start with trying to be cooperative, and you can try it again and again, actually, to see if the person reciprocates. But if the person is competitive with you, you got to be competitive with them. So you got to give them, but you got to make sure your retaliation is not higher than the attack that you got. So if you get attacked, attack with an equal amount. Don't escalate it there. But make sure your opponent knows that whatever you give to me, I'm going to give to you. A tit-for-tat strategy. And if you're nice to me, I'll be nice to you. So the tit-for-tat is both for good and for bad. But make sure that if you do retaliate in a negative way, don't make it worse than what you got, even if you may be tempted to do so. Finally, if you've got these coalitions that are really heated at each other, yelling at each other, Maybe you take representatives from each of those coalitions and have a negotiation. Or maybe you even bring in a third party, a mediator. Or an arbitrator, somebody who is going to listen to both arguments and make a decision. You could have binding arbitration or you could have non-binding arbitration. Binding arbitration means that both parties have to listen to the arbitrator's decision, have to follow it. Non-binding arbitration means the arbitrator is going to make a decision, but the parties can still choose to either agree with that decision or not. Finally, anger. You want to be able to reduce your anger. Find ways to calm down. Rethinking that email is a good one. Make sure you take off that caps lock button. And don't send all those all caps angry emails to someone you are in disagreement with. So calm down. Now realize that conflict is a natural thing. It often happens, and sometimes conflict can actually be a good thing, in that it can improve the make a better decision. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. But nevertheless, conflict can sometimes be undermining, and you don't want it to become very hostile. You want to move toward cooperation as much as possible. And again, task conflict is the key. Forget about those personal conflicts. I don't like you. You're such a jerk. That kind of thing. It is never going to be helpful.